I want you to think about my other hypothesis that banks right now are in hand-to-hand combat, either with regulators like the Fed and the controller of the currency and the FTC, and or the Treasury Department, which adds a political link to the whole story. And that the banks want to de-TARP, and the Treasury won't let them, and that the Treasury, through the regulators and this goofy stress test, are going to use it as an excuse. You need more capital, and here I am from the government. I'm here to help you with more capital, except I'm going to take over the voting rights of your corporation.
I don't see any reason
now,
that
let me get
they'll do
Don Luskin. I want to get Don Luskin in this. Go ahead, Don.
Larry, what you say is true, but it's really, it's not new. It's not the stress tests that are doing that. We've been in this world since last September, when TARP first entered our vocabulary. The reality is that the federal government, for good or for ill, has invested a great deal of taxpayer money in these private companies, and once you've gotten into bed with the devil, it's really hard to get out. So you bet it's political. You bet Rahm Emanuel's running things. And in some sense, he should be, given where we are. Because the Treasury Secretary right now, under the legislation that enables TARP, is given extraordinary powers to do things that no Treasury Secretary in history has ever had the power to do. So in a way, you want it to be under political control.
Well,
you don't want just one guy, Tim Geithner of all people, making these decisions unilaterally.
Well, okay, that's what I wanted to ask you before we get back to Noam Scheibert, Don. Are you suggesting that Mr. Geithner is not sufficiently competent and does, in fact, need the help of Rahm Emanuel, who does have something of an investment background, and it is rumored that at some point, maybe before the year is out, Mr. Emanuel would like to, in fact, replace Geithner officially as Treasury Secretary.
Well, that's an interesting concept.
Are you sort of casting a nay vote against Geithner and saying, heck, let's have Rahm Emanuel because it's coming anyway?
My only knock on Geithner is that he has been unable to inspire the confidence of the American people in the execution of these bailouts. The primary purpose of the stress tests was to create confidence. This was to say the government is going to use the same system to check out all the banks, and when we're done, we'll know the healthy ones, we'll know the unhealthy ones, and all this uncertainty will be gone. Sounds great on paper. The problem is that for some reason, Tim Geithner early on in this thing became damaged goods. He just hasn't been able to convey the kind of personal gravitas that it takes to pull off that kind of thing. So, look, it's a political process,
right.
And we just, it's not good, but that's the way it is.
Well, I want to replay what President Obama said in his scathing attack of bondholders yesterday. Take a listen.
It was unsustainable to let enormous liabilities remain on Chrysler's books, and it was unacceptable to let a small group of speculators endanger Chrysler's future by refusing to sacrifice like everyone else.
What do you make of this? I mean, I got to tell you, everyone is telling me on Wall Street, the GM Creditors Committee, which does not include J.P. Morgan and these big TARPed banks, so the Treasury has no leverage over this group. In fact, there's a lot of tiny little retail bondholders involved in this group. They ain't going to play ball, and they want a big ownership stake in return for swapping their bonds.
Larry, this whole episode is so shameful. It is so shameful. It's fine to have a political objective for a systemically important company like Chrysler where you say, all right, look, we know it ought to go out of business, but there are a lot of jobs at stake, so we're going to figure out some way to keep this thing going. I don't like that, but at least I can start there. But when it comes to trying to resolve the interests of a set of different stakeholders, there are well-established rules under bankruptcy law for figuring out who goes first. And we cannot have the president substitute the rule of law with the rule of whim, where he decides that one class of stakeholders are honorable, the unions, and another class are dishonorable. The word he chose, speculators. How about money changers? You know, it almost starts taking on the tinge of a certain kind of loathsome ethnic stereotyping.
Why not protectors
I find
of
it
firefighters
disgusting.
and police and teachers and, for that matter, widows and orphans? Because that's what these funds do, Don. They're helping people to save for retirement and for rainy day emergencies.
That's right. And in fact, you know, many of the institutions that hold these bonds, in fact, have investments in them by union pension plans.
The rule of law, we have contract rights. Doesn't that amount to anything? Isn't there a value added to preserving that, Mr. Luskin?
There absolutely is. You cannot run an economy unless property rights are well established and well represented and well agreed on. It's a formula for the road to serfdom.
And